Yesterday, March 9th, was the 250th anniversary of one of the most consequential books in modern economics, Adam Smith's The Wealth of Nations. And I've been on here recently complaining that people don't have a good foundational knowledge of economics. And I thought I'd put my money where my mouth is, and I would tell you a little bit about The Wealth of Nations. So, going to look at some of the principles from it. The first one, the division of labor drives productivity. So, Adam Smith used the example of a pin manufacturer where each step in the manufacture of the pin was broken down, drawing the wire, stamping the head, putting on the tip, then putting it in its container. And he explained if you get really good at something, you can become more productive at it. Your productivity will lead to you producing more. You'll produce more. You'll produce it faster. You'll be able to sell more of it, and you'll be able to trade the value of that you produced, the money, with the other things that you need in society. You shouldn't try and do it all. And it's the main reason I don't do automatic transmission repair. There's lots of things I can do. Mechanics are faster on some things, not necessarily other things, but there's lots of things I do just for my own personal, enjoyment. But there's some things that you just don't do because working as a lawyer, I can earn the money that I can use to then pay somebody who's an expert in automatic transmission repair. The invisible hand that controls the marketplace. So this is supply and demand essentially, and this is where prices are controlled at the same time. So if there's demand for something, there will be a price for it. And as demand goes up, the prices go up. But when production goes up, then you've got more of it and you have to lower your price to meet the demand. And essentially, that's basically the invisible hand, the controlling aspect of the marketplace. Prices are generally controlled by the marketplace. Now, there's always the problems with consolidation, monopolies, and things like that. But if you've got a well-regulated market economy, then the invisible hand will control it. When you produce a product, if there's lots of demand for it, other people will get into it. They will start producing it too. They'll make a competitive product or they'll make something else. They might make an improvement on the product. Then there will be demand for theirs. But as they start to produce it, eventually the demand starts to meet the price and it's always meeting the price. And so that's the invisible hand that controls the marketplace. The labor theory of value. So there is this understanding, I guess, that where does value come from? And essentially, you have forests filled with trees, and there is some latent value there. But until you go and cut those trees, process those trees, and are ready to sell those trees, then they're just trees that are there, and they don't necessarily have value except aesthetically. Same with if you've got potatoes or something growing in your field, or you're going and harvesting mushrooms in the woods, there's no value in it until you harvest it. So that is where your actual monetary value, exchange value comes from, is the labor that you put into it. Labor value theory, it's the labor. So if you've got a field of potatoes, and you've got some employees there harvesting the potatoes. Basically, you might harvest a back of a wagon full of potatoes, and each laborer there is getting a pail of the potatoes. The landlord controls the capital, and a certain portion of those potatoes, the value is added by the labor that's in it, and that is how you basically pay people. And you can think of any business basically as they pay people, as giving them their portion of the bucket of potatoes. The theory of what creates wealth on that basis is not that you've got a bunch of stuff, right? The Spanish were bringing gold in like crazy from South America that they were robbing from the indigenous people in South America, but it wasn't making Spain wealthier. Like for a while they had some capacity to trade this gold with other nations, but eventually it just led to a surplus of gold, and gold had the declining value. So just sitting on a hoard of something doesn't create value and doesn't create wealth. You actually have to be trading. Free trade increases wealth, and it does it because basically there's productivity and there's restrictions on what you've got available in your nation, wherever you are. It doesn't have to be a nation, it can be just trade generally. And when you deregulate to the extent that you can, obviously you don't want to do it to the point where it's going to be damaging in some way. You deregulate and have every sort of chemical in your food, for example. You do have to regulate. But in a properly regulated market economy where there is competition, competition externally because you're learning and exchanging, and competition internally within your country, you will become more productive, do a better job, create a better product, and it's beneficial to everybody. It also, in the end, uses less resources because you have less waste. Because every capitalist is thinking to themselves, I don't want to buy extra. Whereas in a directed economy, a socialist economy, they might order, 20,000 boots of a certain size, and it turns out nobody wears that size of boot. A single individual capitalist or person who's working in that industry, who controls that, they have a pretty good idea of what they need to order as a result of the fact that they're in that all the time, and they're dealing with other people in that system who are trying to supply as it's requested and as it's necessary, rather than just a vast amount. So it is more efficient in the end. Self-interest can produce socially beneficial good things, socially beneficial outcomes. So essentially, your desire to go to work and fix people's teeth in order to earn a good living is going to balance out in the exchange. You're going to get paid for it, and the benefit that you're providing the people, they're looking at it and saying, this is worth it. This is worth it going and having this done. If you've got somebody who's coming to paint your house, you're saying to yourself, well, it's worth it to get my house painted. I want my house painted. I'm going to pay this person, whatever it is. And they're going to be looking at it saying, yeah, I'm charging as little as possible because it's a competitive market economy, but I do get that revenue in, and that's how I feed my family, and that's how I live my life, and that's how I go out and buy other goods. And ultimately, that is a social benefit. I think that's probably good for Adam Smith and the Wealth of Nations. He was an interesting fellow, and often right-wing economists hold him out there as a guy who was just totally supportive of complete deregulation. That was not the case. He expected that government had a role to regulate in an economy, but the government should be stepping out of things like tariffs because they are fundamentally damaging. Things that place undue restrictions on free trade are fundamentally damaging. But he wasn't saying that we need to open our markets up to everybody being able to come and buy land here, take over factories or businesses in your country. Like, they still expected the government to have some role that is a rational role that makes sense in the circumstances for the country, but that the most fertile ground you can create is a market economy that is well regulated and where competition exists, because those are the things that lead to those positive benefits of a market economy. Now, we've never come up with a better type of economy, but now we're looking at the potential for universal basic income and things like that, and that might fit within Adam Smith's viewpoint. But it also may be one of these circumstances where it's wealth coming not from productivity, but from basically like hoarding wealth, and it may end up doing the same thing as what happened to Spain, and that is driving down the value of money. Have to wait and see, because nobody's actually really tried it except on small scale basis. And on a small scale basis, on a small area, for example, say we were to give everybody in Williams Lake, BC, basic income of $1,000, it would probably just boost the economy of Williams Lake, BC. But if you did it to everybody in Canada, it might just drive down the value of the money, because everybody's got more money to spend, still competing for a limited amount of goods and resources. Anyway, 250 years of Adam Smith. That was March 9th. It was a day ago, and I've been talking about this stuff. So I hope there's been some learning happening.